my greetings to your watching the public. I think let me start by saying that the NDA and SADA are organizations that arose out of the need to address the chronic and persistent imbalance in the development between the northern parts of Ghana and the southern parts of Ghana. Essentially, the spirit behind the establishment of these two organizations was to address those sort of structural issues, structural causes of poverty and underdevelopment that affected both.
The person talking is not on.
Yes. Sorry, is there a problem with the...
No, please go on. We can hear you. Please go on.
Oh, okay, sorry. So it was essential to address these gaps. So whatever judgment, comments that are made about both institutions, I think we need to start from that fundamental background or basis. They were also instituted or brought on at different stages of our development and by different governments with different approaches or perspectives on how best to tackle these imbalances between the two parts, the northern and the southern parts of Ghana. So essentially, that's the starting point. I think there have been issues, or we've heard all sorts of issues that have been raised about SADA. I don't want to mention any of those issues, but I think basically to say that those issues have then clouded the very good work that was done by SADA in terms of a lot of solid, groundbreaking research that was done on the conditions, prevailing conditions in northern Ghana that would form the basis for developing strategies or plans to address those challenges. Because I think sometimes we get carried away by some of the issues that it's almost like we get pushed to following red herrings around when people make an effort to address problems. Then we take this red herring approach. I'm not saying that the issues that were raised on SADA were not necessarily important local, but I think we then lost track of what the reasons for establishing SADA were. Coming to the NDA, as you know, followed on from I wouldn't say the NDA and SADA are necessarily the same philosophically, although the foundation, as I said at the beginning, the reasons for establishing them were similar. But I think one of the differences is that the laws establishing the NDA, the provisions are different from those that establish the SADA. But and also the NDA was followed very closely by the government commitment to address these inequalities through strategies like the IPEP, the infrastructure programs to tackle this poverty, which would, in a sense, and then of course the One Village, One Dam initiative, One District, One Factory. All these initiatives, these human-centered initiatives, are initiatives that were linked with the Ministry for Special Initiatives, which under which the various development authorities fell. So somehow I think there's a very different initiative or situation that we are dealing with. If you get what I mean.
I get it, but I need further clarification before I bring Alhaji Ibrahim Tanko into the picture. So sure. I'm getting the impression that SADA, and I'm sorry I'm going back to SADA, I just need to set the proper perspective so that we can proceed with the rest of the conversation. So we were told initially that the establishment of SADA, for instance, was so as to bridge the development gap between the north and south. Now the NDA comes in and you say the permutations are totally different. So you give an example of the IPEP, and then you also refer to the 1V, 1D project. With the IPEP in particular, we know that Coastal Development Authority, Middle Belt Development Authority all had the IPEP project spread over. How does this address the development gap when all these were spread out equally. At the end of the day, if you were to have 50% development for each of these areas, development authorities, what it will mean is that you are still lacking behind if you were doing so maybe 30%.
No, I think that let us go back to the philosophical basis of the IPED, which is that, and also to look at what I would call the structural causes of underdevelopment and poverty. Structural causes being lack of infrastructure, lack of roads is one thing, health facilities, schools, educational services. Now, and also, of course, the whole issue of electricity, access to electricity and water. These are all some of the structural causes of poverty and underdevelopment and inequality. And let us also understand that inequality and lack of access to these facilities spreads across the country. It's not, if you take the coastal belt, there are communities that have the same problems that the communities up north have. And the same way, there are communities in the middle belt that have the same problems. The capacity and the kind of complementary strategies that one might need to address those problems may be different. For example, if you take the middle belt, some of those places like that fall into the Ashanti region, Kintampo, Brown, all those places, the rainfall patterns, all sorts of conditions are different. So their capacity, the threshold for communities to actually contribute to or even participate in changing their situations are different from the northern parts of the country. So even though infrastructure programs have been provided across those communities, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are treating them almost the same, because the types of projects that are carried out in the Middle Belt and coastal would be different from those that are carried out in the north. But even if not, as I said, fundamentally, inequality is felt widely across the country. But I think the point we need to make is that the nature and intensity and depth of these problems are different in the northern part of the country for many, many reasons, in terms of the structural factors. But also, if you look at the agroclimatic conditions, we have in the northern savanna zones, we have one prolonged dry season, almost in some cases up to 7 months of no water, and almost impossible for farming activities to take place. So those sort of differences make the specific other interventions, like the one dam, to assume a huge significance.
I think, right.
Because it means that with the water. Sorry.
Doc, you were wrapping up. Yes, we lost you for a few seconds, but you are back on, and you may want to wrap up before. Yes.
So I'm just saying that the complementary initiatives like the One Village, One Dam, you realize that even though the infrastructure programs were carried out across all the authorities, the development authorities, the One Village, One Dam initiative was launched mainly in the Guinea Savannah. So that is where the rain, the prolonged dry season, and the conditions prevailing in those places makes the dams very, very important. And I tell you, no matter what anybody says, in the long term, we are going to see that these One Village, One Dam initiatives would have made a huge difference in the lives of communities in these areas. And one of the things that we are looking at moving forward, and in fact, one of the things that I'm sure we are coming to the summit, one of the things we hope will happen is that we'll have investors and others, development partners, coming to help us consolidate the initiatives like the One Village, One Dam. Because I don't think everything is perfect, but there is room to making what we know is an essentially excellent initiative or idea.
All right. I'll now bring Alaj Amidu Ibrahim Tanko into the picture now. Alaj, you're Executive Director of the Star Ghana Foundation. We know the Star Ghana Foundation is a civil society organization. You've been involved in a number of projects, but I'm just wondering, why are you so immersed in this particular summit and its organization? Tell us.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening to you and to your listeners, viewers. Star Ghana Foundation is indeed a civil society organization, but the primary aim of setting up the foundation is to promote development, equitable development, inclusive development. And what we mean by inclusive development is looking at helping to provide the enabling environment for all parts of the country, but also to be able to access the services that they require for their development. So we classify that under our social inclusion approach or orientation. Under social inclusion, we're talking about women, we're talking about young people, we're talking about persons with disability, and also the deprived areas of the country. Northern Ghana, by all definitions, is part of the deprived areas of the country. And that is why we are focused on Northern Ghana. But not just on Northern Ghana, but other areas of the country that are considered as deprived.
So when I advertised that I was going to have this conversation and that Star Ghana Foundation was immersed, deeply a part of the organization of this summit, I had a few people on social media asking me to make a few suggestions to the Star Ghana Foundation. And I thought those were very interesting views they expressed. That, for example, we have had so many forums, so many summits, workshops and talk shops, after which everybody goes back to sleep. That instead of using the amounts of monies Star Ghana Foundation, for example, uses to sponsor such summits and talk shops and workshops, why don't you invest those monies in the construction of boreholes, for example, in the construction of school buildings, for example, and so on and so forth? These were questions that came from a few of the persons who are currently even watching the program right now. What will be your response, Alaj?
Well, I mean, I would say they are excellent suggestions, but we exist to help address the causes of underdevelopment, deprivation, poverty, and not the symptoms. And we think that to sustainably address poverty and inequality in this country, we need to move beyond Star Ghana constructing one or two schools to enabling citizens engage with government to ensure that the duty bearers fulfill their duties, they're able to do what they're supposed to do, and are accountable to the citizens of this country. And I think that, in a way, we demonize talking.
All right, so we're having some break in the internet connection there from, I believe it's Alhaji Amidu Ibrahim Tanko's end. We'll fix it out and then get back. So as we wait for Mr. Ibrahim Tanko to get back reconnected, if we still have Dr. Abdullah on the line. Doc, so same question I'll pose to you even as we wait for Mr. Ibrahim Tanko to rejoin us. It's important to have such discussions when such money is used for the organization.
Ensure that we avoid duplications and to move forward. So yes, we think that constructing schools and boreholes is important. Equally important would be providing spaces where citizens are able to engage with duty bearers to ensure that the right things are done.
Right, so let me bring Doctor back into the picture. But when I return to you, I would like us to take a look back at some of the events and summits or fora that Star Ghana has been a part of, especially in the northern Savannah ecological area, and to find out from you what results have been achieved from these fora. And then again, you talked about addressing the causes of poverty. What really are these causes? If you can chew on that when I return to you, those are the questions I would like you to answer for us. But Dr. Suleiman Abdullah, Board Chair of the NDA, if you're still with us there, so who are, you spoke about investors. Who are some of these investors you expect to be a part of this summit?
I think this summit is a summit that we hope will attract different investors, and some of the state actors, the private sector, civil society organizations, to look at the socio-economic conditions prevailing in the NDA zone, to identify strategies, but also to look at investment and financing gaps that development faces in that part of the country. And I think I can say that we have some development partners coming in from as I said, the private sector. I cannot name the specific investors, but I know that some of the embassies are, like the Turkish embassy is coming in, the Saudi Arabian embassy, the British are coming in, the Saudi embassy, people from the Saudi embassy are coming in. So, and then we have some of our development partners, USAID, the British, I think it's now called the British Overseas Aid or something, foreign aid. Well, I can't remember the name right now, but they are coming in. We have all sorts of others have said they are coming in. So, but our hope is that we're going to attract some interest in some of the programs or projects that we have identified that could help us address the problems facing the NDA zone. We call them the catalytic projects that can really transform the lives of communities in the NDA zone. So yeah, but I think more importantly, it's just the fact that in the past we've had governments coming in, the NDA being looked at as almost like a government agency, and therefore the main concern of the government. But I think this forum, the summit, and particularly with this particular forum is different. This summit is different from the previous ones. This is one that has an investment forum that will precede the development summit of the following day. So the first day is devoted entirely to looking at investment prospects, ideas, projects that we hope will attract investors. That's what that will happen in the first day. And then the second day, we'll then have other look at the much broader issues of tackling the root causes of poverty and underdevelopment in the NDA zone.
Great, and that was going to be my next question to you, really, to tell us the key issues that you will be focusing your discussions on at this summit. So obviously poverty is one of them. Well, the issue of security feature at all?
No, we have four. There are four thematic areas. Infrastructure will be one area of focus. Infrastructure will be one. And then social services will be another. And then we'll have a group that will be looking at health. The health and social services includes health, education, and all that. But they will have infrastructure, and then we will also have, I think there are two others, which I'll get back to you on that in a minute. Security and peace are also part of what will be discussed. But I think one thing we need to remember about peace and security is that it's very clear that when there's poverty and underdevelopment, the preconditions for insecurity are become life or are become much stronger. And so the hope is that whatever we're going to do in the summit, whatever initiatives we promote, whatever investments do happen, will in a sense help to prevent conflict and address things like the resource-based conflict that we've seen in other parts of the country, where due mainly to the lack of access to employment, land, and productive resources, there are tensions and people, and of course insecurity. And of course, we also have, as you know, in the neighboring countries, the radical jihadist problems that are emerging in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and other places. And the hope is that we will be looking at how best to prevent this occurring in Ghana.
All right. Alaj Ibrahim Tanko, if you are with us, I'll return to the questions I reserved to ask you. And I know that, for example, prior to the 2020 elections, the Star Ghana Foundation supported, to a very large extent, the Northern Development Forum, for example, who had some issues. They wanted political parties to include in their various manifestos And I know of a few other projects that the Star Ghana supported, especially in northern Ghana. But can you tell us what were some of the outcomes of all these support initiatives, so we can take a peek into what is likely to be achieved following your efforts to get this summit underway?
Thank you very much. I think that, yes, indeed, Star Ghana Foundation and also Star Ghana Program, which was the predecessor of the foundation, has invested a lot in convening conversations and dialogues around critical developmental issues facing Ghana, not just northern Ghana. So we've talked about the elections, we've had convened fora around the elections, the manifestos, how inclusive the elections are. We've convened conversations around the implications of Ghana beyond aid. And of course, we've been involved in the Northern Ghana Development Summit for the 3rd year running. It will be difficult to attribute all the changes that we have seen to these conversations or dialogues, but we contributed. So whether we're talking about peace before, during, and after the elections, we made a significant contribution. If you're looking at the manifestos of the various political parties around, the issues of concern to disadvantaged citizens of this country, whether you're talking about development in the north, whether you're talking about women, whether you're talking about young people, you can clearly see some of the issues that our partners canvassed in the manifestos of these political parties. And I think the fora that we organized across the length and breadth of the country on the implementation of the free SHS policy. And indeed, we did have the minister around, who took up the issues. And they are now being monitored. The commitments that the minister made are being monitored by civil society organizations to see whether they have lived up to that. Recently, post-COVID, we organized dialogues in various parts of the country looking at the effects of the COVID lockdown on girls' access to education, because research has indicated the extremely high number of girls who got pregnant or dropped out of school as a result of being at home, and et cetera, and et cetera. And currently, we are working with the Ghana Education Service, with the National Development Planning Commission, and with the Ministry of Education on the implementation of the Ghana Education Services policy on re-entry of girls back to school. So there are all these things that are happening that we would not say were achieved solely by Star Ghana through its convenience, but we did contribute a lot to this. And then we do hope that the development summits would over time begin to show better coordination, greater accountability of government and other duty bearers to the citizens of Northern Ghana, and consensus on how we can work together to move the process forward.
Earlier, you spoke about one of your focuses being on the causes of poverty and addressing those causes within the Northern Savannah Ecological Zone. But can you tell us what your own observations as a foundation has been over the years? What have you observed to be the causes of poverty in these areas so far? And moving on, what are the recommendations you would make even as we go into the summit over the weekend?
Thank you very much. I think I would start from how, as a country, we have tried to deal with the impacts, the effects of the deliberate policy during the colonial era to reserve Northern Ghana as a labor reserve for the plantation, for the mines, and etc. And that because we have not sufficiently addressed that, we are carrying forward all those effects even up to date. I would say, and that's my personal opinion, that's not of Star Ghana, that the most significant attempts made at addressing the effects of that colonial policy were actually the education, accelerated education policy of the economic regime that invested hugely in education infrastructure at all levels in ensuring that as many people from the north as possible got educated. And so I would say that for me, And within my family, within my village, within my clan, I'm the first generation, graduates. Whereas in other parts of the country, my peers, my colleagues would be about third or fourth generation graduates. And that shows you the kind of business that we. So I think the first is how we commit resources to addressing those imbalances in the areas of infrastructure. Whether we're talking about social infrastructure or we're talking about fiscal infrastructure in the form of roads, markets, etc. We're looking at investments in developing the human capital of the North. That's because of the systemic issues, the neglect, the lack of sufficient investment. We do not have the kind of labor force in the North that can drive, the development of the area. That's the second. You mentioned the issue of the conflicts and etc. Conflicts are a symptom, but also a cause of underdevelopment, and that's also is something that has had a huge impact. That we cannot attract the teachers, the doctors, the skilled professionals to the North because of the feeling of insecurity and etc. that exists there. So these three areas, the lack of investments in developing the infrastructure, to the weak or poor human capital base, three, the conflicts and insecurity that drive away investments and professionals. And to address that, we can't do business as usual. We would need, if you recall, after the Second World War, America had what they call the Marshall Plan, that was needed to develop Europe after the war. Because they knew that for America itself to develop, they needed Europe to develop. And I think it's the same thing that for Ghana to develop, we need to have a northern Ghana that is developing and able to contribute to the development of the country. We can't develop Ghana with only part of the country and ignore the almost half of the country. It is in everybody's interest to ensure that these are developed, because then the multiplier effects on every part of the country will be very, very significant.
All right. When I return to you again, I would like us to talk about this partnership, obviously, between civil society, which is the Star Ghana Foundation, and public service, which is the NDA. Given the fact that civil society usually works from a totally different background in terms of its psychology, in terms of its orientation, from that which most public service organizations such as the NDA and even maybe GBC has. I'll come to you and find out how easy it is to collaborate with government in some of these efforts that you are making. But let me bring Dr. Abdullah back into the picture. Doc, so we're talking about the summit, but this is certainly not the first. It's about the third summit. How different will this summit be from that which happened in previous years?
I think one of the differences that this summit will make is that precisely the question you asked. You said you were asking Alhaji Tanko, which is to do with the relationship between the NDA and civil society, development partners. We are putting a lot of emphasis on the synergy that can be developed, the kind of what we feel will be beneficial to the people of the Northern Ghana if we have development partners, the government, civil society organizations, like for example the international NGO group are also very actively involved in this summit. And the thing is that I think in my involvement with civil society work over the years, I've never really felt the kind of adversarial relationship that you describe between government. Well, I obviously describe as such, but it seemed to me to imply that there's always been this kind of tension between civil society organizations and government agencies. But I know from my own experience that the best programs that we have developed have been those that have started by working closely with grassroots government agencies to look at issues, the problems facing communities, bring communities together, dialogue, and arrive at solutions that they feel would work for all parties or stakeholders. And I saw that in the Action Aid program in Boku, and I've seen that in other programs, that the ADD programs in Northern Ghana. So I think that's what I want to just make before I go. So one of the main differences is that this summit also hopes to highlight the critical importance of agricultural development in the overall development of Northern Ghana. So far, we haven't really talked much about it, but agriculture is one of the most important areas that we feel would make a lot of difference in the development of Northern Ghana. So for this summit, we are hoping that we will attract investors to look at all sorts of initiatives. For example, the establishment of mechanization centers across Northern Ghana that would provide services for large-scale and small-scale farmers. And it fits into this whole idea about the inclusive development point that Mr. Ajitanko mentioned earlier. Because hitherto we've had facilities that have always looked at large-scale farmers. But the northern agriculture can only thrive and take us to the next level. We can only see a step change if we can include the small-scale, so-called subsistence farmers in the initiatives that are introduced in agriculture. Another thing that we're also looking at in this summit is to identify programs, what we call some catalytic projects. Yeah. And we're hoping these have been identified and will be outlined at the summit. For example, there's a project that is to do with the establishment of an apparel factory up north that will provide jobs for young people across Northern Ghana. And that will also have an implications for reviving the cotton industry in the north. And then there are other initiatives or programs that we hope would attract investors in looking at the Buipe area and establishing what you call industrial hubs in Wa and Bolgatanga. So there are all sorts of initiatives that we hope this summit as you can see, this summit really is emphasizing practical things that we can do, identifying projects or programs that can really make a difference in terms of in the areas of employment, in income generation, but also addressing the needs of women and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of difference between this summit and the previous summit.
All right, Doc, and it's interesting that okay. I just wanted to add that it's interesting that you brought the issue of agric to the fore, agric development. I'm just wondering, because this year, even though the Bagri Dam was not spilled, indeed, it was at a point where it would have been spilled. In the absence of that spillage, farms, and you're in the Upper West region, you're going to the Upper West region to have this summit. Farms in many parts of the Upper West region, in many parts of the Upper East region were flooded just by rainfalls. And if the Bagri Dam had been spilled together with the Kompienga Dam, a lot of havoc would have been caused to farmers who were already devastated by only rains. Even as you discuss agriculture, will these issues come to the fore so that every year we do not have to come to the same point where we're talking about the Bagri Dam and its spillage and the consequences it is likely to have on the people, on the farmers in the areas that you are going to have this summit in particular?
Yeah, I'm glad you've asked this question because actually, interestingly, there's a project that was actually being launched and the government cut the sword, the president cut the sword to the Kpalugu hydroelectric power and irrigation project in the Akpagu. And you realize that it is a place that will potentially irrigate 100,000 hectares of agricultural farmland. And that project will also actually manage some of the problems we've had with water spillage from the Bagri Dam, because that water coming in will be harnessed to produce hydroelectricity and provide feed into the grid, our national grid, and at the same time provide agricultural farmland for our farmers who can use it all year round and be able to deal with all the problems that we've had, as I said, with prolonged dry season and so on and so forth. And I think one of the things about the northern landscape, agricultural landscape is, yes, the threats of the spillage from Barry is one thing, but actually being able to harness that water into the Polgo project, but also managing with the other dams. There are a lot of other dams, the Fia, Tono, and all those others. Look at how we can manage water resources in those places. And you can see the difference that Tono and Via dams have made. And I think we need to look at how we can increase the number of dams that are accessible to farmers and also for livestock production in northern Ghana. And that's going to make a lot of difference to the lives of our people. I tell you, at least providing employment during the prolonged dry season or all year for that matter.
All right. Just before I bring in Mr. Amidu Ibrahim Tanko, let me just read out a few messages that have come in. This one from Samikwe says, as policies and programs like 1D, 1F by government is maturing, corporate tax and income taxes for employees, for example, from the revamped Anglo Gold Ashanti, Eco dues, just to mention a few, sales tax for local sales, e-tax from digitalization, export duties, if these companies are exporting, are taxes that government will be harvesting for engaging in production or services. Government taxing from productive activities, and I'm reading this on the spot, so there are a few grammatical and typographical errors, so please forgive me. Must be commended. Good evening to Honorable MP and Minister. Okay, Mavis Kumsin. Okay, thank you. Anita Obo Emisa, you sent in that one. Okay. Zakaria Abdullah says, greetings to you all. I'm in the Ashanti region, and I'm also watching you from the Nkwanta in the Ashanti region. Thank you very much. All right. And somebody also says, I'm watching you all the way from Abidjan, and this is a very fruitful discussion. Do more. Farhan from Wa East says, I'm watching you from IUCG. Good evening. Kofi Ado says, great job. Good evening. Eunice Abenya Adigbo says, interesting conversation. Thank you very much. And there's this one that says, Moomen, good evening to you. My name is Kofi Asarieje. I am not a northerner, but I have passion for the growth and development of the north. Because if one part of the country develops and the other does not, then we are doing what I call a cost-90 development agenda. You see, when these girls move to the south for Kayaye, when you have all these guys at Agbogbuloshi burning ties and other metallic materials, it is not because they don't want to live better lifestyles. It's only because where they come from, there is underdevelopment, there are no opportunities, and then they come here, and then Accra becomes overpopulated. Were we to develop the northern part of the country, then we will have this migration. So I fully support this agenda. May all those traveling for this summit come back alive and safe. Thank you very much. Let me return to Alhaj Amidu Ibrahim Tanko, who is the Executive Director of the Star Ghana Foundation, who are very much behind the organization of this summit. So I was asking what the collaboration is like for you as a civil society organization who perhaps work from a different kind of orientation from that which public service and government agencies work with. Now you're having to collaborate with RCCs from the 5 regions of the north. How easy has it been for you going about this?
Thank you very much. I think, usually when we talk about the development of northern Ghana, just taking a step backwards, the first thing we hear is that you have so many NGOs in the north, and yet it's not developing. Well, how come, and etc. And I think that one of the lessons that development practitioners have learned is that you cannot do without government in the development process. Government has the mandates, government has the resources, government is one of the key duty bearers for development. And therefore, when we have just civil society organizations or NGOs going around implementing their projects on their own, what you end up with would be islands of success surrounded by a sea of deprivation and underdevelopment. that the only way towards sustainable development is for partnership, for collaboration between civil society, government, and the private sector. And when I talk about collaboration, I'm not just talking about being in bed all the time. Develop the kind of constructive partnership that enables collaboration, but also that enables accountability to each other and to the citizens. And that is what has informed the partnership between Star Ghana, the NDA, and the regional coordinating councils to get this moving. Because Star Ghana would come and go. Government would be there in whatever form. It will always be there. And therefore, it makes sense for the government agencies or the public institutions to hold the process of organizing this summit so that it will be part of the development agenda. So that's the rationale. As to the challenges, I think that in the most perfect of relationships, there will always be challenges. Civil society wants the thing that immediately. Government agencies want, the step by step. This person has to minute on it, and it has to go to this person. The general, all those things. But I think, given the fact that this is the third year running, we are organizing this. It shows that we have learned how to work with each other. We've been able to overcome these challenges, and that we have a very collaborative and very fruitful partnership that is inuring to the benefit of the citizens of Northern Ghana.
And I always want to let you know my next question even before I ask. And so when I come to, and it's unbelievable that we've been having this conversation for 50 minutes already. I have been looking at my time and I thought it was just 10 minutes. We've been doing this for 50 minutes, which means that we have just 10 minutes more. It tells you how interesting the conversation is going. But Alhaji, so when I return to you as we begin to wrap up, I'd like to know what the follow-up plans will be after this. Because like we said at the beginning, what are the measures that will be put in place to ensure that whatever discussions take place do not end up at the workshop, but also at the talk shop, but then also at the workshop, so to speak, so that we can see some action taken after the summit? What are the plans? That's what I would ask you when I return to you. But again, Dr. Abdullahi, so who is invited to this summit? Who are the persons, the stakeholders who will be participating?
I think this summit is under the auspices of the coordinating council, regional coordinating council, the ministers of state in all the 5 northern regions of Ghana. They are actually essentially the hosts of this initiative, and we as NDA is the secretariat, and our relationship with Star Ghana and other partners, as Alhaji Tanko has explained, is one that's worked well for all of us in terms of being able to put together a summit of this nature, to bringing private sector, government agencies, civil society, and others to the table to discuss, identify strategies, and look at how best we can transform lives in Northern Ghana. So I think that I would say this summit is really is being hosted by the regional coordinating councils, working closely with Star Ghana and other partners. But the NDA is the secretariat. But also, obviously, because of the Enabling Act of the NDA as a facilitating, it's the facilitating role of the NDA. The hope is that this summit actually gives us a lot of, provides an opportunity for us to be able to do what we have been established to do, namely facilitating long-term development, social and economic development in the NDA zone.
All right, Doc, I have a message on WhatsApp from someone. She says her name is Farida Zakaria. She says, Moomen, good evening to you. I would like you to ask the NDA board chairman why it is that they do not have their office in the north and yet have established a plush office at no less an area in Accra than cantonments. Having an office anywhere in the north will drive development to the north and not as it is in Accra.
No, the NDA headquarters is in Tamale. The NDA headquarters is in Tamale. The Accra office is one that serves multiple purposes. I mean, obviously, with the seat of government being in Accra, that office has served to provide a place where NDA staff are kept in touch with government agencies, development partners, and others. So I don't think the Accra office is the headquarters of the NDA. No, the headquarters is in Tamale.
All right.
And there are also regional offices being across the north. There are regional offices will be are operational in Wa, Bolgatanga. One will be established in Savannah, in Damongu, and so on. So yes, I think that is a misconception.
Okay. Suleimana Aziz says, Moomen, please find out from the NDA if the summit will also address the issues that have put the NDA in the public light as has given the NDA a bad image in the public light. Will that also be addressed? So he's asking, he says there are a number of issues that have put the NDA out there in the public, and it doesn't look too good. Are you going to do anything to ensure that moving forward those image issues are addressed?
Oh yes, actually, very much so. I think one of the things I've always said, I've asked this question elsewhere before, is that one of the challenges we've had is communication. Communication, transparency, participation. I mean, if you, for example, with this summit, out of this summit, we are able to put together programs of work that will involve identifying programs that we want to implement. It means that we have development partners and all the other people involved. And so right from the beginning, everybody knows what's on the table. Everybody knows what the project objectives are, where we want to go, and so on and so forth. And I think, unfortunately, we have had a situation where, whether it was SADA or the NT, certain things, I don't know whether it's the material, little material things are coming in and distracted people from the good work that these institutions were trying to do or were doing. And I think that's unfortunate. But moving forward, NDA is our purpose is really, our focus is going to be promoting development, doing what we're established to do, changing creating opportunities for employment for our farmers, our mothers and sisters who are involved in all sorts of activities, so that lives can get better for people in northern Ghana. And I don't think we are going to go back to things that have always, as I said at the beginning, to tell these red herring issues, as I described it.
I would like to wrap up with Alhaji Ibrahim Tanko, but before I return to him, what will be your parting words, even as you also begin your journey to participate in this summit? Our viewers are listening. Yes, Doc.
I think my parting words would be the fact that this is an opportunity. Yes, I said my parting words are that this is an opportunity for us to engage with some of the processes are the reason why the northern region, the northern parts of Ghana are underdeveloped. This summit provides an opportunity for us to do that, but also to find strategies, identify strategies, and hopefully attract investors who will come in and work with us to bring about real, positive, lasting change. And this is very important in the light of climate change, the population increases, urbanization, and all sorts of other things that we are facing today. So I think this is a very, very important summit for me. And for me, you mentioned Kaya. Yeah. When working in my role as a board chairman, the images that come to my mind are those of the people like the Kaya, our young men and women who are looking for jobs, our farmers, small-scale, large-scale farmers who are looking for services to be able to engage and continue farming. I'm looking at the distances some people have to travel to fetch water, to get water, and animals have to struggle, also distances they have to travel to access water. These are also all the issues. The bread and butter issues are things that drive me, and I hope that will help us to succeed in whatever we set out to do as NGA.
All right, Alaj, let me frame my question this way. So you are sponsoring this as Star Ghana Foundation for stakeholders to go and meet at what they call the Northern Ghana Development Summit to talk and share ideas. Question, and so what?
All right, thank you very much. But just to correct this, we are not solely sponsoring this.
Right.
The interesting thing about this year's summit is that participants are required to pay for their participation, right from government officials through to civil society organizations, etc. We would cover the cost of just a few people, ordinary citizens who may not be able to pay, but whose voices are nonetheless quite critical at the summit. So it's a co-creation and co-implementation of the summit. And so what? And so that at the end of the day, we are able to mobilize our resources, our efforts around the core issues that we think are critical to the development of Northern Ghana. And so what? That at the end of the summit, we do have a number of actionable recommendations that we can use as a basis, first for advocacy, not only with government, but with development partners and our traditional authorities, etc. But also as a basic accountability that we can, citizens of this country can ask us. Moomen tonight can call us and call government and ask. 3 months ago, you met and said ABCD. How far have you gone? So it provides us tools for accountability. And then the third would actually be creating that sense of a shared mission, a shared endeavor across stakeholders to the development of Northern Ghana. And you haven't asked me about my parting words, but I would say that if you were to ask me, I would say that let's approach the development of Northern Ghana as a critical issue for the development of Ghana. It is not charity, it is not favor. It is in the interest of Ghana to ensure that we address those diseases, we unleash the potential of the North, that if agro-industries spring up, it contributes to the development of industries down south. If we manage the ecology well, we get more water going to the Akosombo Dam for us. If we reduce poverty and we give people a stake in Ghana, we address the likely issues that would promote extremism, terrorism, conflicts, etc. So by all accounts, we need a Northern Ghana that is able to contribute to the development of Ghana. And we can only do that when we create these spaces for conversations, for joint action, and for coordination. And we look forward to reporting back after the 25th to the people of Northern Ghana, but also to the people of citizens of Ghana on what we discuss and what we have come up with.
Thank you very much. Since you decided to give us your parting words, I wanted us to continue with the discussion, but you have parted ways with me already. I'd like to say thank you to you, gentlemen, and we wish you a safe journey even as you go to the Upper West region for this summit. It's the Northern Ghana Development Summit. I've been speaking with Alaj Amidu Ibrahim Tanko, Executive Director, Star Ghana Foundation, and also Dr. Suleimana Abdullahi, Board Chair of the Northern Development Authority. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And thank you to you for being a part of the show tonight. We are ever grateful to you, our numerous viewers, and to those who sent messages on WhatsApp. I didn't have the time to read all, but I do thank all of you for sending those messages, and to those who watched on social media, Facebook, and our website as well. Kudos and gracias. See you tomorrow when we bring you another edition of Moomen Tonight. Very good night. Bye-bye. Voices that matter speak. They speak to GBC. They speak on Moomen Tonight. By